Okay, let's start. As I said last month, when we had an introductory session about timestamps and time zones, I highly recommend to first watch the recording of that session before actually going into this session. So if you watch a recording and are not online, then I suggest that you look at the session in October and view the recording of the session first. So this month, I want to introduce the process of time zone file upgrade. I plan to do some online demo of the actual process in December. This month, we will talk more about theory and less about actually looking at the screen, how the whole process works. So, as said, we will talk about time zone file upgrade. My name is Sergiusz Wolicki. You may know me from previous sessions. I work for the database development at Oracle and mainly helping other developers, making sure that Oracle database software works properly in other countries, fulfilling the requirements that the users in other countries may have. Okay, so let's first start from the source of the changes that force us to upgrade a time zone data file in an Oracle database. So generally the Internet Assigned Numbers Authority organization maintains a time zone database, which originated as a private project of Arthur Olson. So this is why this TZ database is always is often called an Olson database. However, the maintenance of this database has been taken over by the IANA organization to make sure that it is properly founded, and in case there are any law litigations that happened actually for the time zone database, that there is an organization backing it up and not that a private person has to take care of everything. So there is a time zone discussion mail list, tziana.org, where you can anybody can subscribe. Usually the members of this list are those people who are really interested in keeping time zone information up to date. So basically developers from various companies that have to update their time zone versions. So this includes people from Oracle as well. And if there are any, so there are two sources of changes to time zone database. So this time zone database basically keeps information about various regions, geographical regions in the world, and tell us what offset compared to the universal time UTC a given region has actually kept for its local time in a given time period, right? So this information changes over the history of timekeeping. These are not just DST rules, right? There are sometimes even regions that do not observe daylight saving time may still change the local time from for example, you have counties in United States, and there are counties that decide to switch from, let's say, mountain time to Pacific time, or from mountain time to central time, and so on. So it's not only rules associated with daylight saving time. Those change most often. However, there are also changes related to simply decisions by a given region that they want to switch to some other time. So first type of changes are corrections, because there was not enough information recorded in old time, historical times, like in 19th century or beginning on 20th century, for each of the region, what were actually the times, time offsets for the local time compared to UTC. And this information is slowly discovered by various people who dig through old press archives and so on. So there are sometimes changes related to the history for a given region, and these changes, if confirmed, can be taken into consideration in the time zone database, in the new version of the time zone database. More important changes are those changes to daylight saving time rules, or, as I mentioned, a region can actually switch from one time zone to another time zone permanently for whatever reasons. And these are decisions that are made by local governments and published in press or official governmental sites, and people who are familiar with the TZ database usually notice this and inform the maintainers of the database about those changes. Once important changes are introduced into time zone database, historical are usually not that important. They can be accumulated and published with the next version. They are not urgent usually. So if there are any changes to the actual current rules, usually for coming future, close future, then a IANA maintainer, Mr. Egger, currently really decides to release a new version of the IANA database, and the new version is announced on the second mailing list, TZ announce, which is maintained just for people who are only interested in new versions of the database and then don't want to read the whole discussion about changes in the database. They can just subscribe to TZ announce and learn about new versions coming. And IANA versions are named with the year and a consecutive letter for the given year. So the first release in this year was 2020 A, and the current one is 2020 D. So we already know there were 4 releases of the database this year. So as you can see, those rules change pretty often. And so it's not like you change the version of the time zone database like one in 5 years. It happens a few times a year, usually. So once a new IANA version is available, various software uses this source of truth to actually generate the files for the given software environment. So Java will have its own time zone data file information that will be generated from the IANA database, and Android will have its version. So phones have to update, iOS will have an update, and so on. And the same is true for Oracle database. We have our own time zone file format, so it's not like we just import the IANA database. Oracle picks the new version and generates automatically a new version of Oracle time zone file with patches for various database releases and platforms, because these files are not guaranteed to be portable between releases and operating systems. So you need to find the patch for your platform and your database version if you want to update the time zone file. You don't have to update time zone file if you are sure that you don't have any timestamps in your database that are actually affected by changes in the time zone file. So let's say if you have a local US database that only keeps information about United States customers, users, processes, and so on, then of course you are not interested in most time zone version updates because they will affect many other countries and regions, but not necessarily United States. However, you need to remember that even if there are like no daylight saving time rule changes in the United States since 2007, there were still some changes for some counties in United States that changed the rules, regional rules for just a small region for United States. And it can always happen that you may have a timestamp that is affected by such change. So you need to make sure that you upgrade the time zone version if necessary. There is a support note with the number that you can see on the slide, which is like a central place for time zone patch information. It's a pretty long version. Sorry, pretty long file. Let me share this with you. This. Oh, okay, unfortunately it expired. Let's see if it will refresh automatically. Okay, you can see it's a pretty long document where you have a lot of information, like which time zones are affected, each file. Actually, there was a question in previous month about whether we have a note that tells what's the default time zone version for a given database release. And actually, this central note has this information as well. I don't list of okay, I have forgotten which point it's actually in this list. Okay. So this note contains this okay, this is this information, right? Overview of what DST version is by default used, included in what Oracle RDBMS version, and you have this information up to 19.3. So the 32 is the newest version and the default version for 19.3. The next release will have a newer version. I think the version 30, the current newest version is 34. So once Oracle 21C is actually released, then you will have a newer version, and this note should be updated with this information. Okay, so let's go back to the slides. So we have the doc ID, so the MOS node, the Oracle support node, with various time zone patch information that you might be interested. And the general schedule is that since version 11, we try to produce proactively 2 versions per year, one which is released in June, middle of June, the other is released middle of December, and it incorporates the changes or incorporates the time zone database version from IANA which was current like 1 month earlier, right? So we have 1 month to generate the files for all relevant platforms and releases and publish them on support site, on MOS site. There are sometimes last moment urgent changes to the time zone rules, and there are customers who request such updated version of the time zone file that incorporates such change, and then we can release additional patches earlier, so that because half a year may be actually much too long to wait for such change, if this change actually comes into action earlier. And of course, everybody needs some time to update the time zone file in the database. So there is some lead time needed. Okay, so time zone file upgrade. These are generally 2 phases, right? The first optional phase is the preparation phase. It is optional. However, Oracle strongly recommends that you actually execute this phase so that you know what to expect from the actual upgrade, and you don't have some surprises that you don't want in the upgrade phase of a production database, which you usually want to take as little time as possible. So you want to avoid any surprises. So in this preparation phase, you will check the number of affected tables because it will affect the time that is needed to upgrade the database for the time zone. For each of these affected tables, you may want to, or you are actually interested in the number of rows that actually have to physically be updated. So the times, because the affected tables are tables that first that have a column with the timestamp with the time zone data type. This is the only data type that is affected by this whole process. So neither date or timestamp without time zone or timestamp with local time zone, they are not affected by the process. Only the timestamp with time zone data type is affected. So you are interested in which tables have those columns, and also how many rows are in each of these affected tables. And also there are certain like corner cases usually. So usually you should not have too many of those errors. However, there are situations where updating the time zone file may actually result in some errors for certain values in the column. As you may remember from the previous month, or you can find it in the recording of the previous session, we talked how the timestamps with time zone are stored, right? They are stored as UTC time plus the time zone information. Either this time zone information may be an offset, so like -7 hours in respect to UTC, or plus 11 hours in respect to UTC. Such values are not affected by time zone file upgrades because they are already absolute, right? There is just, you don't have any regional information, you have just an offset, you have the UTC, nothing can change here. No government can actually change a fixed offset that is just numerical. However, you can also have, instead of an offset, time zone offset, you can have a time zone region, which is stored as a region ID in a timestamp with time zone value. And then this, the actual offset for this given timestamp, so how to calculate the local time from the stored UTC time, is calculated by looking up the time zone file. And when the time zone file changes, then this information, this offset that is recorded for the given time period, for the given region ID may change, right? So from the same UTC time that is currently stored on disk, when this rule changes, then the local time after upgrade that you will see will be a new one, right? A different one if the given value was affected by the change. If it was not affected by the change, you will see the same local time. However, if it was affected by the change, you will see a different time. In this upgrade process, we assume that what you actually want to see after the upgrade is the same local time, not the same UTC time, so not the absolute time that was recorded, but actually the local time. So if the offset changes because of the changes to the time zone file, then you want to correct the UTC time to actually finally, after the upgrade, be able to see the same local time, right? So different offsets, so you have to adjust the UTC time so you get the same local time after the upgrade. So this is an important assumption. So the important assumption in this process is that you actually want to keep the local time and not the UTC time. If you want to keep the UTC time, then you need to take care of those columns in a different way than the one that we described here in this presentation. So of course, so the whole upgrade process is about correcting the UTC time. However, this correction is not always possible. So let's recall the DST changes, right? So we have the change from winter time to summertime and from summertime to winter time in autumn, right? So when we change from winter time to summertime in spring, we have 1 hour less of sleep of the given night. This happens because at the given time, usually it depends on the given region. I think in US it may be like one in the night, or depending on the time zone, it can be actually 1 or 2 or in the night. The clocks are expected to go forward to the next hour. So we are expected to switch directly from like 1:59, for example, to 3. So there is no hour 2. Nothing that is 2 a.m. This time does not exist, right? So now, if we have a local time that is actually like 2 a.m. 30, right? 2:30 a.m. And this was a day that there was no change in daylight saving time from winter to summer. But now there is a new rule coming, and the new rule says that actually on this given Sunday, for which we have this timestamp at 2:30 a.m. stored, there will be a switch of time from winter to summer at 2 a.m. So we will directly go, instead of going to 2 a.m., we will directly go to 3 a.m. In the morning, which means that after the upgrade, any time between 2 a.m. and 3 a.m., or actually 2 a.m. 59, right, plus seconds plus fractional seconds, this time does not exist anymore, right? We are expected to jump over this 1 hour. So then, if we had such timestamp and now we try to upgrade the time zone file, we cannot update the timestamp directly to keep the same local time, because this local time does not exist anymore, right? So this is the error of non-existing time. And if you don't tell the upgrade process to ignore these errors, then the upgrade process will actually record this error, which is ORA 1878. That message is kind of confusing a bit, but the actual number is important here. So the 1878 is the error that tells us there is a problem with not existing time. The opposite, kind of opposite problem exists in autumn when we switch from summertime to wintertime. Let's say we have, again, in winter, we actually put the clocks 1 hour back, right? So let's say at 3 a.m., we actually put the clocks, local clocks in a given time zone to 2 a.m. again, which means that the time period between 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. exists twice, right? First, we have the from 2 a.m. To 3 a.m. summertime, and then we switch to winter time, going back 1 hour, switching the clocks 1 hour earlier. So we get an extra hour of sleep in this autumn night. However, this time exists for the second time. So there are two local times, like 2 a.m. 2:30 a.m. for example, is we have this time twice. So when we have again some timestamp that says 2:30 a.m. and on Sunday that was not cutoff or cutoff time for summertime, right? It was a normal Sunday, but now there is a new file, and actually this Sunday becomes this Sunday that when we switch from summertime to wintertime, then this and we decide to switch at 3 a.m. back to 2 a.m. Then this time stamp at 3:30 a.m. again cannot be uniquely mapped to the new local time, because we have this local time twice, and we don't know whether a user wants actually the first instance of this time or the second instance of this time. And then the error 1883 is reported by the upgrade process unless it is explicitly ignored. There is also a third error that may exist, which is reported with the same error 1883. It's actually when a time was local time was overlap time. So the in the old version of the time zone file, we actually had the this given timestamp in the period of time that existed twice, right? And now, after the change of the time zone file, this is no longer the change date, right? And in this case, we also are not sure if the mapping that the given UTC and gives us is the one that you actually want. So there are three types of errors. However, this third type of error is actually not distinguishable from the second one, because the same error 1883 is reported. So this was the preparation phase. The errors that you may see, these are called semantics errors in the documentation. Once you analyze those errors and take care of them, you have all you can start the upgrade phase where there are actual changes to the database tables that adjust the UTC time stored in the columns so that the local time after the upgrade is the same. There are two, or let's say since Oracle Database 18c, there are two ways to perform an time zone file upgrade. The one uses scripts, which are in the RDBMS admin directory, where all other administration scripts are usually installed. And then the names of those files start with UTL TZ. And there are 4 files that comprise the whole process. The first one that I listed is count star, which actually counts rows in tables affected by the upgrade process. It doesn't count the particular values actually that are affected, but instead it tells you how many rows are on those tables. Generally, when you run an upgrade check or actually also do an apply, in many cases all rows are at least read from the table. So it's not only the number of actually affected timestamps that is important, but actually the number of rows in a given table is important because the whole table may need to be read as part of the upgrade process. So count star as you can see here, I run this on my local laptop, right? And the count, simply the script runs the select count on the tables that have timestamp with time zone data type columns. So first it shows all columns in the sys schema, so basically data dictionary. And there are some tables that may have quite a number of those rows. You can see here that there is like history tables for statistics, right? For like history of histograms. And my database, which is test database and which does nothing, and is not even started most of the time, has already 40,000 rows. So a production database may have really a lot of rows here. So you may want to truncate this history. There is a section about this in documentation to make sure that I mean, if you need the history, you can save it somewhere and don't, so that you can look into this and don't really bother about small problems with the time there. However, you want to truncate the actual tables to make sure that the upgrade process does not have to read them and upgrade them. And the other one that is sometimes pretty large is the event log for the scheduler. Right, I also have 976 records in a database that does nothing. So scheduler actually runs only the system jobs, right? So you may want to purge this log as well. And then you get the same statistics for tables that are usually, you get the user tables here. I have an empty database, so you just get some non-sys tables, but still Oracle maintained tables like Apex or GSM admin or VMsys. I don't even remember which functionality those tables belong to. So these are some advanced queuing tables here that store timestamps with time zones. They are almost empty except for some table in Apex, which I think is actually not really growing much. So still the total count 2009 rows in a production database. If you actually use such timestamp with time zone data type, you may of course here have millions or billions of rows affected, depends on the database. If you maintain your statistics properly, right, for all tables in the database, instead of using the count dollar statement, so the one that count star SQL script uses, you can actually just list the numeric statistics from DBA tables, which are there, right? So in the first script will actually query all affected tables. So if you have a very large table with a timestamp with time zone column, then it may take a few hours, right? It depends on your database, the size of the table, and the number of processors, and so on and so on. So if you have statistics, then you may just prefer to query statistics for the same tables to make sure that this is much faster, right? Because this is just a metadata query. So as we can see there, the numbers may differ, right? Because the statistics in my database were not updated so properly. But in your production database, if you maintain statistics properly, then this script, the script count stats, will be much faster. Okay, then we have the actual upgrade scripts. So the first is the upgrade check, which runs the preparation phase. And the other one is upgrade apply, which runs the upgrade phase. So you just run these two scripts, and if there are no errors, then you just don't really have to do much. Additionally, those scripts will always upgrade to the newest time zone file that is installed in your Oracle database home. So if you want to upgrade, you first install the patch with the new time zone file, or you upgrade the database, and then your database has older file from the previous database, and the newer software has a newer file. Then you have this file already in your Oracle home. It depends whether this time zone file upgrade is because you also upgraded the database release, or just because you have installed the newest time zone file to be able to use the newest rules for affected regions. So these scripts will always upgrade to the newest time zone file that is in your Oracle home. Oracle files are just numbered consecutively from first version that was released when DST rules were added, in Oracle 9, I guess, and then we just number them consecutively. So that I think the newest version is 34. So this is different to the IANA time zone database, which has this year and letter in the year naming scheme. There is also the older, so pre-18C manual upgrade, which is more, you need to do more, right, when you upgrade. However, it gives you a better control of the process, right? The process does not automatically cover certain issues in older databases. The scripts have certain checks that will result in warnings that will warn you about some bugs that existed in older versions like 11.2 or even 12.2. There were bugs in the upgrade process. So the scripts will check those conditions and will warn you and tell you whether you have to do something extra to like install maybe a patch or fix something manually. This manual process won't do this for you. So if you encounter the problems, you will have to look for the solution on the Oracle support site or called Oracle support to actually learn how to fix the issue. So this is manual upgrade is less convenient less comfortable. However, it gives you full control or much more control over the upgrade process. So for the manual process, you use the DBMS DST package and DST tables and tab calls view, which tells you which tables still need upgrade, and the DST dollar tables that where the check process actually or the upgrade process will write down if there are errors, or will tell you which tables are actually affected by the upgrade process. So the preparation phase, you start by calling the begin prepare procedure in DBMS DST package, and you pass the version of the time zone file to which you want to upgrade. So you have this this extra control over the script process, that you can specify a version that is lower than the newest one that is installed in Oracle Home. This is sometimes needed because it's sometimes needed because the newest file may have some daylight saving time rules in some region, and for this region the government decided at the last moment that they won't actually implement those rules, so the file has changes that are no longer valid. So you may want to actually you can either deinstall this file, remove this file, or you can specify the lower version in begin prepare and upgrade to the lower version. Or you may want to do this for some whatever compatibility reasons with some other databases, where you may want to move the table spaces or similar processes where you want the versions to be the same to save on time for this data move. Okay, so you start the preparation phase with the begin prepare. Then you actually call the find affected tables procedure. You can pass names of two tables, affected tables, and so one is passed in the affected tables parameter, the other is passed in the log errors table. And these tables actually, so affected tables registers all tables that may be affected by the upgrade process, so that have these columns with timestamp, with time zone, column data type, right, and are not empty, and has and have some rows that are actually affected by this change, right? So there may be so that you may have no actually rows that need an update in a given table, because you may, for example, have or timestamps that have an offset. Then the given table does not really have to be updated. Okay, so you can pass the names of those tables. You can specify whether you want to log errors actually, or maybe you are just interested in the affected tables, right? If you decide to ignore the errors during an upgrade, so let the Oracle handle them automatically, then you can just pass false to log errors, and don't bother about those semantics errors, that 3 semantics errors that I mentioned previously. And you can specify that you want this process to run in parallel, especially if you have a very large table. You can and you have the parallel option installed in your database or available in your database, then you can speed up this queries by using the parallel option. And then with end prepare, you actually inform the database that you don't that you finish this window, which will like they install or unload the new time zone file that had to be loaded for those checks to be actually possible. And the information from this phase is returned in tables that are by default called DST dollar affected tables and DST dollar error tables. However, as I said, you can specify different names for the find affected tables procedure, and then there are also some procedures in the DBMS DST package that allow you to create the tables with the necessary columns so that they are compatible with the procedure. If we look at those tables, we have DST affected tables, right? We get the table owner, table name, column name, right? The row count for the table, the number of rows that are affected, and the error count, so the number of problematic cells in the given column that may have one of those errors. If errors are actually logged, not only counted, then the DST error table will contain the row ID of each row that has the problem in the given column name, and the actual error number is registered as well. So like this 1883 or 1878 that I listed there will show what is the actual error for the given value. Okay, so let's go back to the slides. Then once you know what is in your database and you took or decided what to do with errors if you have logged them, then you can run the actual upgrade phase manually. You specify the new versions again to which you want to upgrade, and you can specify whether you actually want these errors for the overlap time and non-existing time, so 1878 and 1883, to be a problem, right? So if you specify false for those parameters, here you specify this for system tables, right? So begin upgrade begins the phase, loads the time zone files, but also upgrades the data dictionary columns, right? So sys tables, once begin upgrade finishes successfully without throwing an exception, you know that data dictionary tables have been already upgraded. You have to start begin upgrade, you need to be in upgrade mode, and in case of rack database, you need to make sure that you have only one instance started. Otherwise, you cannot start the upgrade window. Once begin upgrade finished successfully, you should restart the database in the normal mode, and then you can actually upgrade the non-data dictionary tables using the upgrade database procedure. It has a first parameter, which is an out parameter, where you actually have to pass a PL/SQL variable where you will get the number of tables that were not upgraded successfully. So only if this returned number is 0, you know that everything finished correctly. And then you can specify the parameter upgrade data. This is an interesting parameter. Normally, its default value is true, which means you actually want to change this UTC timestamps. However, if you pass false here, you will only mark the tables as already upgraded. So if all your columns are to be interpreted in the way that I mentioned, that actually you want to keep the same UTC time and not the same local time, which is rare, right? However, theoretically possible, you may actually specify false here, in which case all affected tables will simply be marked as being upgraded, and then you can finish the upgrade process. However, the UTC times won't be upgraded, which means the local times that were affected by the time zone file change, version change, will now point to show different time that it used to show with the previous version of the file. You can specify again whether you want parallel processing. You can specify whether you want to continue after errors, right? So if this parameter is false, then the first table that fails for some reasons will stop the process. If you specify true, then the upgrade will continue, and then you will get the number of failures at the end, and then you can manually upgrade those tables after fixing whatever issues caused the failure. Again, you can specify log errors, whether you want semantic errors, so those overlap and non-existing time errors to be actually logged in the table. By default, this is again DST error table, but you can also pass this in the parameter errors table. And then you specify whether you want to the overlap time problem to actually be an error, or you want Oracle to handle it automatically. So the upgrade database procedure, if you specify this as false, will simply keep the given UTC value, right? So if there is overlap time, it will keep the UTC value. So the local time that you get is the one that corresponds to the UTC time according to the given new time zone file. That's it. So simply no update happens on the given value, and whatever comes out of it is fine. And this is actually the recommended way to handle those errors, unless you are really, really worried about whether this local time points to the old time or new time with the new rule. Same for non-existing time. If you say false for this parameter, then Oracle will keep the UTC time unchanged, and then whatever local time you get, you will get it, right? And then there is also a log triggers table. So this is a table that when a table is upgraded, so the timestamp values in the tables are upgraded, triggers on this table are first disabled, because this is not this is like a system update and not really a functional update. So you don't want any update triggers on the table to fire and mess up with whatever business processes you have on the table. So all those triggers are disabled. However, if the upgrade of a table fails for some reasons, some system reasons even, you may get whatever, not enough memory error or something, or instance may simply die. You may have certain triggers that have not been enabled after the table was upgraded. So this table will have rows for each trigger that has not been enabled again after the upgrade of a given table. So you need, if there was a failure of the whole process, you should check this trigger table. By default, it's called DST $trigger underscore table. You should check this table. If there are any rows, you may want to actually enable manually those triggers so that your business processes work properly after the upgrade. If there were any failures and we have continued after those failures, you can do whatever is needed to, depending on the error, to fix the issue, and then you can use the DST upgrade schema or upgrade table to do a fine-grained upgrade of those remaining tables that have not been upgraded until now. And then at the end, you can actually end the upgrade, passing again a variable where you get the number of failures in this whole process. If this is if the value returned is 0, then the upgrade phase actually finished properly. However, if there were any unconverted tables from the upgrade process earlier, this number will be greater than 0, and the upgrade will actually not finish. So you will have to finish the upgrade of the failed tables. Otherwise, you won't be able to end the upgrade process. Just wanted to show you. There is an interesting view that you may want to check when you upgrade the database. There is a DBA version, of course. However, Oracle documentation always describes the columns in the all version of the view. So it's why I am showing all view, and DBA will usually look into the DBA view to see the whole database. And as you see, this view will show you during the upgrade the owner and table name of each affected table, so the table that undergoes the upgrade process. And there will be a yes or no indicator whether the upgrade is still outstanding or whether it has been already executed. So for all data dictionary tables, you will usually see no here, or you should see no here, because the begin upgrade process has already upgraded them. Otherwise, it fails, and begin upgrade is atomic. So if any of the system data dictionary tables fails, then the whole process fails, and all changes are actually rolled back. So either you can upgrade the whole data dictionary or not. Okay, so we don't really have much time for questions because it's already 8 my time, which means 7 UTC, and the session is already over. However, if you have some quick question, please ask. As said, I want to continue the subject next month with actually some demo showing the both processes, the manual process and the script-based process, and maybe try to show some errors and actually how this looks like. So if you have some questions, you can also ask them next month or through the interface. Okay, I have a question. Okay, it's actually not a question. So thank you for the kudos, and as said, the subject is large, so we will continue next month. So thank you all. Also, if you have some questions that may, for example, require more investigation, you can also ask them through the appropriate interface on the Ask Tom page. Again, I mean the question for office hours, not the Ask Tom questions, the general interface, but the one that you have when you actually look at the office hours tab. Then you can ask questions there, and then the advantage is I can prepare earlier and have an answer during the session. Okay, so thank you very much, and goodbye.